Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things Porsche. Owner stories again today. This is Tuesday's episode. We're up to number 32. 32 today, and we've got Simon who'll join me very shortly. These owner stories are done by Zoom or via Zoom. I'm in the UK. Simon's in the UK as well, coincidentally, but I'm still doing them by Zoom. And Simon's going to connect to Zoom very shortly, and we'll start talking. If you want to be on these owner stories, I am still looking for people to be on owner stories. I have a bit of a list of people to get through at the moment, but that doesn't mean you can't contact me. Just give me your details. Just send me a DM through Instagram, PorscheCooled or Michael.Bath, and I will get back to you. And eventually we will schedule a time to record an episode. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into it. Let me get Simon and let's start talking about his PorscheCooled owner story. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories. Like I said before, this is number 32. We've got Simon coming in today, and Simon, I'm going to get this right because last week I actually got the wrong location for someone, but Simon is in northwest England in the UK. Good afternoon, Simon. How are you? I'm
very well. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I mean, we've chatted briefly on Instagram. As I said to you before, I kind of like it actually. I don't know a lot about your story. I mean, I know what you own, and all the listeners will know what you have because it'll be in the title. And I know you mentioned, and I didn't ask you before we started recording. I know you said you had a YouTube channel, and I didn't actually get the address of that YouTube channel, but we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah.
And also, I just noticed in my notes that you've also found me through Ajmal. So you're a bit of a fan of Ajmal's videos on YouTube?
Yeah, so I found him just a few months ago, and then in one of his videos, he mentioned coming on your podcast, and I think he said, I've put it in my, the actual notes for the YouTube video. So from there, so I just Googled you and found you that way, which was great, and then started listening. So a bit of catching up to do, and I'm still working through all the content, but enjoyed it right from the off. And then once I heard your, your user podcasts and such, I thought, well, I'll just drop you a quick hello. I'll be honest, and I've since heard other people say it. I thought at the time, well, I don't know whether it's going to be interesting enough. But since then realised that I think people quite like the normality of just hearing just normal stories of just people's, experience and how they got into liking Porsche and what the background and history has been,
Yeah, and that's where it all came from in the beginning, because I just wanted to be, basically like how I was, I'm looking for a Porsche, and you're sort of looking at other people or reading forums or watching YouTube videos and just learning, more about it for people that have just got one or people are looking into the brand. So I think that's what's great about the owner stories thing, because, we all have, I keep saying, there's always that common thread, but it's always that little bit different as well at the same time, which is interesting. And I mean, I really enjoy them. I do actually enjoy listening back to them and getting to meet everyone as well. And also seeing, Simon, other people meet each other. Like the other day I saw that Luke that was on with his 996 cab had met up with James at Porsche Platz in Brisbane in Australia. They'd actually met up. So I thought that was pretty cool that people are actually meeting up and connecting, because we all have the same interest, and we're all, we're all Porsche fanatics, and we like to chat about Porsche.
And that's one of my reasons for owning the car also is, A, because it's a Porsche, but secondly, the main thing, it's a fourth car, so it's the social side of it. I'm meeting with other people who are like-minded, and going on the runs. And there's a club on Facebook called TPEC. I think it's the Independent Porsche Enthusiast Club, and they have different. It's really good. And the most enjoyable thing about it is they're not stuck up in the slightest. They're a really down-to-earth group. Okay. They're not judgy. You don't get any snide comments when people, maybe put something on that people don't like, unlike some other groups I've been on. And, the Northwest region of I think the acronym is TPEC, is really big. It's in fact biggest in the UK. There's 330 members now.
Okay.
And they do lots of runs. Obviously, it's been dialed back all through COVID, but they're just kicking off again. And, the runs I have been on have been brilliant, really good fun.
Fantastic.
And people from 924 owners all the way up to, really expensive stuff like GT3, 993 GT2 kind of ownership.
Oh,
So you get the
nice.
lowest end all the way up to the upper end.
I'll have to have a look at that. Yeah, someone sent me a message to say that I should have gone out to the Porsche Club UK thing that they have every second Sunday or third Sunday here, somewhere near Canary Wharf. They have some meet at some coffee shop. Someone told me I should go there and check it out and check all the cars, but I just couldn't do it today. I would like to go and have a look at it one day, but I know it's nearby and I've heard about it before. Anyway, let's get into your story. I always like to start these episodes with the beginning question, so to speak, about how you got into Porsche, and whether it was something that's just happened now later in life when you've had the money to buy one, or was it something that you've always lusted over since you were a kid? Were there any relatives or friends that owned Porsches, over the years? How did it all start for you, Simon?
Well, my love of cars, my petrol head kind of status only started when I first started driving, really. And the main reason was because I started reading. I didn't read much when I was younger. My kind of reading ability wasn't brilliant when I was in my teens. So I started reading car magazines, which my cousin gave me a huge pile of them, and suddenly got into cars. Then passed my driving test at 17, and then literally it all just spiraled from there, really. My earliest Porsche experiences, one of my friends used to do valeting for a guy called Dave who sold used cars, and he also specialised in used Porsches and was a big Porsche lover himself. So he sold all the bread and butter stuff, but he would also had another line where he didn't have a showroom for this stuff specifically, but he kind of progressed into the more expensive stuff. And my very first experience of driving a Porsche was just before I was 19. And he asked me to come with him to, I think it was Glasgow. Okay. And he bought a couple of Porsches from a sports car auction up there. And we got the train up to drive them back. And it was winter. It was raining. I was 18, never driven a Porsche before. And he threw me the keys to, now I've looked into it. I know it was the 3.2, and I'm pretty sure it was an 82. At first, I think I said in my message it was an 80.
82, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a 3.2 Super Carrera SC Targa, and it was in green. And I think, I can't remember what they called it. It was quite a bright green. And
it's like the Viper green, but it's not called Viper green. I know the green you mean.
Gelbrun or something like that.
Yes. The one you can never pronounce. Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
Exactly. And he literally said to me, do all your braking in a straight line.
Yes.
And try not to crash it and keep up. And then he took off at a rate of knots with me following him, and we drove 250 miles back. And it was amazing. But for the first probably, 40 minutes, I was gripping the wheel so hard. And that was my kind of baptism of fire.
Yeah, it's a bit frightening in that sort of weather, driving an air-cooled for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, we got to the motorway, obviously, but before that, we were, going through a bit of twisty stuff. And I literally just said, look, if you're brake in a straight line before you get to the bend, because your engine's behind you. And that was it. And I had a few twitchy moments, but, got away with it, obviously.
I guess, it's similar advice that I had as well when I first got my Porsche, but that's good advice, good solid advice. If it is one thing to tell someone what to do, that's pretty much it, isn't it? Brake before the corner, don't brake on the corner.
I think he did it on purpose, to be honest, because he knew, I loved cars. I think it was just before, I had a front wheel drive Sirocco, Mark 1 Sirocco GTI at the time.
Nice.
And then shortly after that, I got an RS2000, which really taught me how to drive because rear-wheel drive and had engine work done on it and a LSD put on the back, and that was great,
That's a great driver's car, isn't it? They're very sought after now, the RS2000s, aren't they?
It's too much money, to be quite honest. As with a lot of cars, I don't think they're worth the money. The way that they've gone, there's a lot of cars out there, I think people think they want one, they buy it, and then they realise that it's a 1980s car that they're driving,
yes.
and it drives like an 80s car. I had a friend who bought a Capri, did the same thing, hated it after he'd got it.
I guess you see it in a different way though, don't you? Because you've owned the RS2000, you've owned it in the time or whenever it was. And then, looking back at it now, you think, would you want to get another one? And, this makes me think about people who would like to relive their past and to buy all the cars they've owned before. You know, that people who have a lot of money and they buy the cars that they've owned.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's always a good thing. You know what I mean? Because
no,
not all the cars we've owned have been great cars. And like you
Yeah.
said, they date. You know, they're still 80s cars or 70s cars, you know, so they're a different
the kind of
experience.
thing that to maybe buy as a second or third car. I know, for instance, there's a few people I know who, one of the cars I had was a Renault 5 GT Turbo, and I absolutely love that car. And I know people who always wanted one, couldn't afford it. And I've got a friend now who's looking for one, but he's going to have to spend 20 plus £1,000 to get a really good one.
Yeah.
But he will buy, you know, he's got the money. His money's just sat there, and he'll enjoy it for what it is. But like he said, I've got to get one that's sorted, that's right, that's not going to break down, and that I don't have to spend a lot of time getting right. I'm quite happy to pay somebody for the fact that they've already got the car right and driving right, and you know, and those kind of people, if they can indulge themselves, then yes, I think you're kind of fulfilling that desire that you always had. And maybe if you couldn't do it.
Yeah, true. So after you drove that Targa, though, your friend, you know, gave you the keys and you drove it. Did you think about Porsche much after that, or you just wanted good drivers' cars?
I was realistic because I always loved Porsche, but I never ever really looked at maybe buying one because I couldn't afford one.
Yeah.
So I bought what I could afford, and so after that, I got my RS2000. I had a Quattro, a UR Quattro, which was quite a leggy example and was good fun, but kept on breaking. Then I got my 5 Turbo. And so I always kind of bought, and typically there was a lot of cars I would always look at. And for instance, the E28 M5, always wanted one.
Yep.
Was very close to buying one back in the early 2000s. And this was a South African car that had been brought over it was completely rust free. It was £10,000. It was a one owner car. It was perfect, but I just couldn't afford it. I should have borrowed some money to buy it, but I was brought up in a family background of being self-employed. And my dad kind of taught me to practice kind of delayed gratification. You know, when you've got the money, save up, buy it and own it. And then you've got an asset rather than, he always said to me, the only real borrowings you want to have is for a house. And then you want to look at paying that off as quick as you can. Now, maybe you won't always be able to do that.
Yep.
So I've always done that. So every car that I've had, I've never had finance on a car. And I know that's quite rare for a lot of people. And I'm not criticizing people who do it, but I've just never done it. You know, so
yeah, no, it's a good way to be. It's definitely a good way to be if you can do it, and you can wait as well. You've got to be quite patient, don't you? Because you've got to save the money and then get to that point where you can actually buy it. So is that what happened with the Porsche? So years have passed. You've had a few cars. Are any other memorable cars? I mean, you've had good drivers' cars. You've had good cars that you could drive on the road, or you could take them to the track. It feels, you know.
Well, other really good experiences, which I didn't realise how special the cars were, came through the same person. I know that probably about a year after I drove the SC, he asked me to go and fill up a Porsche, which was a 924, but it was a GT. Okay. So, which I now realise years later it's quite a rare beast. There weren't that many of them. And it looked like a 944 because they had the arch kit on them and the scoop on the front. Yes. And I think that was left-hand drive.
Okay.
So I drove that, and I also drove a CS, a white with the left rim was red down the side. Now that was left-hand drive, and again, I know that the Club Sport, you know, would that be GC as well? I know that they're quite a rare beast. There's not
they're rare, sought after. Yeah,
they've gone up a lot. But back then, it was probably a car that he would have paid maybe 15 grand for. You know, not big money.
Sorry, Simon, your friend owned these cars?
Yeah, he was a dealer. So
he was a dealer.
He bought and sold them, and would quite often run these cars. You know, would buy something, run it for 2, 3, 4, 6 months maybe, if he loved it, and then sell it on.
So didn't you, being your friend and being a dealer, didn't you find that tempting when he was letting you, look at these cars and drive these cars? It was still a situation.
I couldn't afford them. Typically, a car like that might have been 12 or 15 grand. I was spending £1,000 on a car.
Oh, okay, understand.
At that age, I just didn't have the money, and I bought my first house at 21, which again, a lot of my, I was the first one of all my friends to buy a house. So I never had any money. I always had enjoyable cars, but I kind of didn't get involved in worrying, kind of thinking about these cars because I knew I couldn't really afford them.
So you're being sensible. You're being quite sensible, really.
Yeah. And another thing I actually wrote down because I was going through some old photographs, and in '89, so I was 19 at the time, I remember going to what they called was a supercar test day. I don't think they even called them track days back then. And at that day, I ended up getting a passenger ride in a DP Motorsport 935 Turbo.
Oh, wow.
Big wide body thing, white with the blue livery down the side, which again is a real kind of icon car now. Went round in that, and it was ridiculous how quick it was, especially for the time back in 1989.
Absolutely, that's a great experience.
And got strapped into that thing, and on the same day, I actually got a passenger ride in the very first R32 Skyline that was imported into the UK.
Right.
Well, I'm saying that. He said it was the first one in the UK. And I didn't know what it was. Nobody there knew what it was. And that had been tuned by a Japanese tuning company called Going, who don't exist apparently anymore. I think they were absorbed by one of the bigger ones. And that was about 450 horsepower. Wow. And that was ridiculously quick, again, for 1989.
Yeah, for the time, absolutely. Yeah,
and I fell in love with those cars, but again, could never afford to buy one. And now they're big money.
Yeah, they're huge money. So let's fast forward because everyone's waiting to hear about your Porsche. How did the Porsche come about, and when did you decide, okay, I'm going to get a 911?
Well, as is the case quite often, my wife, when she listens to this, will be shaking her head and probably agreeing. I tend to do what a lot of men do, is I'm only looking, and then I end up finding the right car, then buying. So I did it with my second Integra. I was only looking, and then the perfect car came up, and I said, I've got to buy this car, of which she's wonderful, my wife, because she does let me indulge myself, and she also likes the cars. And the same thing with the Porsche, really. It was like, well, I'm over 50. I've still not really bought what I'd call a real performance car, and started looking. Initially looked at 997s, and then quickly discovered that I actually preferred the 996.
What did you prefer about it, Simon?
I preferred, that's a good one. I think compared to air-cooled, what I liked about, I remember reading about the 996 when they launched it, and they basically said it's 30% or more better in every way than the outgoing 993.
Yes.
And, they basically developed that as far as they could, whether it be emissions or lots of other reasons. And it was modern enough to use quite a lot if I wanted to. It was quick enough to kind of scratch my speed itch, as it were. And also I knew that they were massively undervalued. And I'd driven a 997, but I'd never actually driven a 996 before I bought one. I actually, first time I drove, C4S is when I test drove my car that I bought.
So it was more of a price thing that swayed you into the side of the 996, or you just preferred it? No, I know the listeners are always interested in this, because a lot of times it does come down to the price.
I bought at the upper end. I kind of bought at the top end because my feelings were, if I'm going to buy one, I'd rather buy one at the upper end. Obviously, you've got to be able to afford it, but at that end, so the high 20s, I could have bought a nice 997. Yes. But I liked the look of the car, the slightly more retro look of the 996 I preferred. I like the steering wheel. All that did was steer the car. There was no buttons on it apart from a horn, which I liked. Yes. Same as with my Integra. It felt a more analog car. And I think the driving experience between a 2003 C4S and say a 2005 997.1, from what I could gather, were quite similar. Right. And I drove a 997 C2. Probably maybe a year before I bought this car, and they felt very similar.
All right. So before we get deep into what you've bought, did you own the Integra? You mentioned to me that you have a Integra Type-R. Did you have that car before you bought the 911?
Yes. So my second Integra I bought in 2012. So I've had that, for many, many years. I've basically got my daily drive, which I use for work, my Integra, which I probably only do 1,500 miles a year in that. I use that for track days when I've got the time, a few decent club runs. I go with the Clio Trophy Owners Club. They do a run each year through Wales, from North Wales through Mid Wales to South Wales. And I've kind of lucky enough to be able to come along with them guys. And that's always an amazing weekend. So, yeah, that one is just, and summer evenings, I might take it out and go out for a blast once the sun's setting.
So that's like your fun car. That's like your track car. That's like the car you sort of tinker with and do things with. And
yeah, that was the one that I knew that gave me what I wanted, because it was a very analog and an amazing car to drive. But not a lot of money. I mean, they've doubled in value and are still increasing. But at the time, $6,000 would buy you a really nice one when I bought mine.
Are they UK delivered, Simon, or is they Japanese?
So I've only owned the UK domestic market cars.
Okay.
And mine's the Starlight Black, which probably out of every 20 cars, I think one of them would be black. Most of them are white. So out of 20 cars, I think the figures are 16 would be white, 3 would be red, 1 would be black. But I didn't go looking for a black car. It was a one-owner car, owned by a doctor, bought from new, low miles. It was just the right car. So I bought that, and I've just kept it ever since.
Yeah, I've been in a few Integras, but I haven't been into an Integra Type-R. But even the basic Integra was a very popular car. Very popular car.
I mean, for normal driving, they're horrible. They're horrible on the motorway. They are, but if you're driving them just around town or just on the motorway, then there's nothing special about them at all. They're just very tinny because there's no sound deadening.
Yeah.
High revving, on the motorway, but you get them on the track or around twisty stuff, and you're driving them hard, and they're fantastic.
Yeah, so it follows that trend, and the trend is buying very enthusiast type, cars that are very sought after now, sort of track orientated if they want to be, like you said, not so great on the normal road. So then you look at the 996. So tell the listeners what 996 you bought, if you know what the specs were and the color, and then we'll start talking about that one. Okay,
so I settled on a 2003 C4S manual. For me, for what I wanted it for, was the only choice because, like I say, it was a fourth car. It's in Polar Silver, which I didn't realise at the time was a special order colour. And there aren't many in Polar Silver, I've been told. This is people with more knowledge than me who have said,
is Polar Silver, sorry Simon, is Polar Silver the one that has the blue through it? It's kind of got a blue shading.
If you think of an ice cube, the kind of blue hue you get from an ice cube.
Yeah, it's a nice colour, very nice colour.
You'd see them more on 993s, apparently, the later 993s. And looking through my codes, one of the codes that's on my sticker under the bonnet is 09991, which apparently is a Porsche exclusive program for paint.
Right.
So I think it was a special order. Like I say, I had no idea at the time, and I subsequently found out that Arctic Silver is the one that most are.
Yeah, because isn't Polar Silver, for my knowledge, Polar Silver's a 993 color, right? It was a 993 color. Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess they discontinued it, well, as in the normal color choices, it was discontinued in the 996, and that's probably why it was exclusive manufacturer.
And that's why it became a special order color. Yeah. And that's why apparently there was very few, which is good. And I do prefer it to the other silver, the Arctic Silver. Is it called Arctic Silver?
Arctic Silver. That's what I have in my 997, which is Arctic Silver.
So I don't dislike it, but if I put them next to each other, I look and say, actually, no, I do prefer the Polar Silver. So, yeah. And it's quite well optioned car as well. Again, I kind of found out more after buying it because I wasn't really aware exactly what and what wasn't options on the car until after I'd bought it. But it's got, I'm not even sure whether PSM, the PASM, Porsche Stability Management, I don't know whether that was an option on the 2003 and 4 cars. I kind of keep reading things that contradict themselves.
PSM, not PASM, right? PSM.
PSM, yeah.
I don't know.
I think it was an option when the C4S first came out. I think it was an option.
Right.
But possibly 2003, 2004 cars, it may have been standard, but I don't know.
Probably. 997, it was standard. PSM
Right.
is standard. PASM is option. Mine doesn't have PASM.
Right.
It has PSM. Yeah.
So it's also got the sports exhaust on there.
Oh, nice.
It's got the sports seats, which I definitely prefer because I have tried both, with the crests, the Porsche crest stamped on the top, which again was an option. It's got the white dials, aluminium, the large aluminium pack, which I think is the rings around the dials, the handbrake, and what else? Might have been the handles for the doors. It's got the aluminium kick panels that say Carrera on them, which again were an option, it would seem. The rear wash wipe, which I love, and I know a lot of people, I heard a few people talk about that, whether they do or don't like it. I like it. I really do like it.
Yep, I use mine. mine.
I know, I use mine as well. And, people say, you've got to get rid of that. I'm like, why? It keeps my back window clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me just tell the listeners quickly before we continue. Let me just tell them your Instagram. It's at pig_monkeys_Porsche. So it's at pig_monkeys_Porsche. If you're listening to this now, just go and check out Simon's Instagram. He's got a couple of photos of his car on his 911 C4S on his Instagram, and he's also got a picture of those seats, which are very, very nice seats. Sorry, Simon, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that Instagram is something that I've never really been into Instagram, but I've only really recently started using it and set up the second account because I have one on there for me because I develop property. So there's not a lot on there, but I'm adding stuff more. I'm not one of these ones who will just keep on feeding it for feeding its sake because I just like putting, I'm not really looking to try and gain followers.
Yeah.
But I'm quite happy,
But it's good to meet other people in the Porsche community because you start putting images on there and people start reaching out to you. So that side of it's quite good, if you follow the Porsche accounts and.
And I didn't know that you could chat to people because this is how I actually talk to you. And this is how I started talking to a flat cap driver. Yeah. I've chatted to him, and I also follow a YouTube channel called Manning Garage, which is.
Oh, yes.
So me and Finn have talked a lot. Since then, because I've been watching his videos and we started chatting. So I didn't really understand Instagram much, but I'm adding things on there and I'm going to continue to add stuff on there as well. And then my YouTube channel is also Pig Monkey as well. But if you basically search for Pig Monkey and C4S, 996 C4S, you'll probably find some of my videos.
So there's more videos of your car on your YouTube, so people can go and check that out and check out your car.
Plenty of stuff on there that I've been doing. So really, once I got the car, I thought, well, I may as well document my ownership and any work that I do on there, and that's what I've been doing. Okay,
so you've picked a good one out of the 996 range. I mean, my favorites and a lot of other people's favorites, of course, are the Carrera 4S. Carrera 4S is really, really appealing. I mean, it's just that rear view of that Carrera 4S is just beautiful, as is the front. I mean, obviously it shares the front with the turbo. The other one is the turbo. On the podcast, Steve's cousin-in-law has just he's just bought a turbo. Actually, he just bought a 996 turbo. So they're very special cars. So what is it about the Carrera 4? You bought the Carrera 4S. Did you get it from a dealer, Simon, or did you buy it from a private sale?
I bought it privately. I was looking at turbos as well, actually. And in the end, I actually didn't buy a turbo for a few reasons. I've got a friend who's got a couple of Porsches. He's got a 992 C4S, and he's also recently got the new Boxster GTS 4-litre.
Oh, nice.
And I drive both of his cars. He's very generous at letting me drive his cars.
Yes.
And his C4S, even though in fact that's like the entry, engine now, but they're a bit too quick, I find. And what I really, in the end, I kind of went full circle and realised that what I find now is that I can use 95% of the power in my car, 95% of the time, without being obviously you can get to a legal speed still very quickly, but I'm not always jumping on the brakes. And the quicker cars now, once you start getting to 450 horsepower, if you are being a bit enthusiastic, you're having to jump on the brakes very quickly. and
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to flow as much. So I think 320 to 350 seems to be about the sweet spot for me. Obviously, power to weight, is one thing.
Yeah, true. This is what I was thinking, actually, with the 992, is a base Carrera the pick of the 992 range, because it isn't as fast as the S or the 4S or the Turbo, and the Turbo is just crazy. Is that now a sweet spot in the new models, that it's just the base model, the base engine? Yeah,
I personally think so. My wife has got a 435 petrol, a convertible.
Okay.
And when we change that, I think I'm going to look at a 991, probably a .1, because I think I prefer the 3.8, which is, I can't really remember. I think, are they high 380s? Somewhere around about 380 horsepower. I'm not too sure.
So. Yeah, I think so.
But that's quick enough, you know what I mean? And I do agree. I think probably the base Carrera. My friend who's got the C4S, he is looking at a Turbo S. Which
they're just too fast, though, aren't they?
They are ludicrously fast.
From all those videos I've watched on YouTube, and I'm sure you've watched them as well, they're just crazy fast. Crazy fast.
The best driving I've experienced, that I've come away with my cheeks aching from grinning, has been the driving where it flows, where you go maybe driving with a group of people. They're not going stupid, but you're just on it, but not going stupid.
Yeah.
And you're flowing through the bends, and you're cornering relatively fast, and you feel like you're cornering, and you're having to position the car.
Yep.
That to me is the most rewarding.
Yep. You feel the weight transfer. You feel everything.
Exactly.
I know. It's a great feeling.
And if you do get it wrong, you're not going to have as big an accident as you might have if you're in something that's got 450 plus horsepower, because you're arriving at that accident a lot quicker.
Yep, true.
My driving standard's okay, but nothing like some people's, you know what I mean?
Well, you do track days, so you have a certain skill level if you start to do track days, right?
Yeah, I'm a decent driver, but I'm got to be honest, that compared to other people I've been in with, I'm average when it comes to being able to drive well, compared to a lot of other people. But I'm good compared to maybe a normal road driver, maybe.
Yes. So let's get back to the 996. So when you found this car, what sort of checks did you do? Because everyone likes to know the process that everyone goes through. Did you do any checks, or did you just buy it off the bat and just go, here's my money?
Well, after listening to, I know that you like a pre-purchase inspection. No, I didn't. I did lots of checks, and I looked at all the paperwork, and I looked at what had been done to the car, and a lot had been done to it. The car, interior-wise and exterior, is fantastic. The only problem I had was it needed an engine rebuild.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So how many miles has the car got?
Well, when I bought it, it had done 59,000, and I bought it privately. The thing is, I don't regret buying the car, even the fact that I've ended up rebuilding the engine, which I have done now.
Okay.
Because the car is a good example. Put aside the fact that it had bore scoring, the previous owner was a real Porsche enthusiast. He'd owned, the last 15 years, I don't think he'd never had a Porsche in his life.
Right.
And I bought it privately off him, and he'd bought it off I won't name them, but he'd bought it off a very well-known large company that sells, used performance cars.
Okay.
And he had owned the car for, I think, about 14 or 15 months. Had only done 1,500 miles in it because he had a very high-level, high-pressure job and just didn't get to drive it much.
Right.
And then was going abroad for a project and was sold the car. When he bought the car, it had a bore scope done and photographs, which subsequently turned out to have been falsified.
Oh, really? By the dealer?
So I had no comeback on it. Yes. So I don't think that he knew. And I don't think he sold me the car knowing it had a problem.
So he showed you this report, Simon, when you bought it?
I got them. He sent them all, to me. He sent all the emails.
Okay.
They'd sent it to somewhere to be done that's a very well-known place that sells Ferraris.
Okay.
And I had all the pictures and everything else. But subsequently, as the following months after me buying it, because very shortly after that we got lockdown, so it took longer for me to discover the problem, because in the first lockdown in the UK, no one was going anywhere.
So you bought this car last year, about the middle of last year?
13 months ago, just before about 2 weeks before we locked down in the UK.
Okay, so you're buying this car, you trust this seller, he's pretty genuine. he's serviced the car. The car's been well looked after. You've got that.
He just spent before the car turned the wheel when he bought it. He spent $6,500 on it.
Okay, so he's looking after the car. Yeah.
Yeah, he did clutch, flywheel, IMS, RMS. He did coffin arms, some control arms. It had It's had new brakes all around. It was, mechanically, it was spot on.
So really, he's done all that work. Then he obviously didn't know about the bore scoring because he would have actually rectified that as well, you would think, if he knew about it. So
or maybe he got out of it. I don't know for certain.
Yeah, it's weird that you would do all that work though, and the specialist wouldn't come across the fact that it also had this other issue, that they wouldn't check it. Do you think?
Well, the thing is, this is why I don't really understand, because cylinder 6 was heavily scored. And after speaking to quite a few people who know what they're talking about, they all said the same thing. The chances that that's gone from no scoring to about 8 out of 10 scoring. There was no piston slap, but it was heavily scored. In 1,500 to 2,000 miles, are virtually none. So, it pretty much had to be there, beforehand.
Okay, so when did you come across it? So it's locked down in the UK. You buy the car. When do you realise that the car's got an issue?
Well, driving the car home, the air oil separator failed on my drive home.
Oh, okay.
Which I didn't really realise because it was absolutely peeing it down with rain. But on the drive back, and I bought this car in Aberdeen, so it was a very long drive back, about a 5-hour drive back. But I had people kept on flashing me. And what basically happens is that as the AOS starts to fail or does fail, it in effect sucks some oil into the plenum and just, you get like a James Bond-esque smoke screen out the back.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I think it was doing that a few times on the way back because people kept on flashing me and I didn't really understand why. I checked the temperatures, nothing was amiss.
Okay.
But then realised in the week or so afterwards, it did the same thing. Massive smoke screen of plume of white smoke out the back. I thought I'd blown the engine up. And then after a bit of investigating, realised what the AOS was, because I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
And that was the problem. And I thought that was, the problems that I was having was to do with that. And then on top of that, I overfilled it with oil, which also meant that it was burning off oil.
Yeah.
So by the time I'd rectified that, and which took a good while, many weeks, I then realised, well, no, actually, it is using more oil than it should be using. And then eventually went and got it bore scoped at a local specialist, and he said, no, you've got bad bore scoring on cylinder 6 and mild on cylinder 4.
Okay.
And he basically said to me, you could drive the car for probably a bit longer without any problems. But once I knew it was there, I didn't drive the car the same. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm keeping this car. I don't intend to sell the car for at least 5 years.
Okay.
I'm investing more money into it, but I want it to be right. So, I went for a full rebuild.
Whose Simon did you decide to get it to fix it for you? Was it the person that inspected it, or did you take it somewhere else?
It was actually the person who inspected it. There's a local place called Unique Porsche, which are in Bolton.
Okay.
And they rebuilt the engine for me. But like I say, a lot of things had already been done. The clutch and flywheel had been done. The IMS was an LM engineering one that was in there, which I didn't kind of realise, but when they stripped the car, they said it's got a decent IMS upgrade in it, so that doesn't need doing.
Yeah, because we always talk about IMS and we always talk about the LN engineering, upgrade. But we never really talk about bore scoring that much. And I know even on the podcast, I haven't really spoken about it that much. But it is something that you have to be aware of, right? It's something that happens.
You know what, Michael? I think it can be more, I honestly think it can be more prevalent in cars that have done less miles because they're not getting run. And one of the things that I have discovered, again, through my journey and I discuss this on my YouTube channel, that one of the worst things you can probably do is start your water-cooled Porsche up from cold and let it idle on your driveway whilst it warms up, which a lot of people think they're doing a good thing.
No, you're supposed to drive away straight away, aren't you?
Get in, put it under a bit of load. Don't rev it hard, but just drive away. And by letting it idle, that is one of the things I think that can, and if the car is going weeks without a start, the oil kind of basically, drains away from the cylinder walls, and you've got just that first instance of where the oil gets spread around the engine.
Okay, but what about this thing? He's scaring me now. This thing when you're storing a car, and people say it should be started every few weeks or every month at least if you're storing a car. You know, and if you put it into storage places, even Porsche storage places in Sydney, they will start your car for you every, 3 weeks. They won't actually drive it.
Start it. I'd let it run for about 15 seconds and turn it off, because you've circulated the oil around. Just don't let it get up to temperature and run a tick over, and just idling. Because the other thing it's doing is it's throwing more fuel in there because it's cold, and that fuel, in effect, is, from what I can gather, is kind of, washing the oil away to a degree as well. You're lowering the lubrication. So personally, I would I'd start the thing every so often, but I wouldn't let it fully warm up, and, or I'd take it out and drive it. But, if you can't do that, then...
Yeah, I know the thing about how and I know I always do this with my 997, when I get into it, I don't let it sit there and idle and warm up like other cars you might do that. As soon as I get into the car, I drive off, and you just make sure you keep it below and watch the oil temperature and wait till it gets up to temp, and then you can drive it properly. But I thought that was in the owner's manual, actually, in the 997. Maybe I read it on Renlist, but I remember when I first got the car, I read that somewhere, and it's always stuck in my mind not to let it warm up.
Yeah, well, most people don't read manuals anyway. They think they know the best, and that might apply to one car, then they think it applies to all cars. And obviously a flat six is a different beast to a lot of other engines.
Yeah, true. So, okay, so you had to do this repair. I won't ask you how much it cost, but I'm guessing it's a lot of money. It's not cheap.
No, they're not cheap. Thankfully, I can say a lot of the other stuff had already been done. And I had a lot of people ask me what I've spent, and I don't answer the question, because I always say, look, it's literally going to depend on what needs doing. I had the heads done at the same time. But if you haven't had your clutch, you've not had your flywheel, another thing, it all adds up.
Yes.
So it just depends individually on what needs doing and how far you want to go.
But now your car is sorted. Now you've got all these things done. Like you said, you're going to keep it for 5 years. We all know the prices of 996s, and we talked about this a bit before we started recording. The prices of 996s have risen, and they've risen a lot in Australia. Like I said to you, they've almost gone to the price of 997s. So investment-wise, you're not going to lose money on a C4S, and the C4S is really popular because it is a really nice variant of the 996. The C4S and the Turbo and the GT3. They're the three, aren't they?
Yes, and people like the look of them. The number of people who are normal Carrera owners, for instance, in the club, who say, "Oh, I just love the back end of your car." They followed me for say an hour, and they're like, "You're making me want to buy one now because I've been looking at your back end for the last hour."
Well, there's something. I remember when I first saw that car. I saw it in a Porsche dealership when it was new, and I thought, "Wow, that one day I'd love to have one of those," because it was just fantastic with the exhaust tips and the back. And I know I'm going to get killed for this by people who are friends of mine who have got 997 C4Ss, but the 996 is more attractive. It is. Actually,
I honestly do. I do think personally
in the 4S, I think it is.
Yeah, I do.
It's unique.
And I prefer the interior. I know that it's different for everybody who's got their own choices. So I'm not saying that everyone has to agree with me, but personally, I do think it's the nicer car. And like I say, the look of it, I love that reflector across the back end of it. Even my wife says, it's got a nice bum.
Yeah, true. So you've got everything fixed. You get this car, last year. You've done all the repairs. It's all sorted. The first drive you take it on, Simon, when it's all sorted, how did it feel?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, really good. I've also done the rest of the... I've not changed the suspension, but coffin arms, control arms, all those have been done as well. I've literally pretty much just finished running it in. So, it just feels good. It makes me smile. It's one of those cars that gives me a huge amount of enjoyment when I drive it. It's never going to be a daily drive. It was never bought for that. So it's literally just for those. The best thing about a car is something that you own to enjoy. To me, it's not a workhorse. It's not general transportation.
Does the C4S have the short shifter kit?
I've no idea, to be quite honest.
Is it a short throw or a long throw?
It doesn't feel long throw. It feels relatively short to me. Whether there is a short throw kit for it, I don't know. Put it this way. The best gear shift of any car I've ever driven or owned is the Integra. Okay. And the C4S is probably 85% as good in my eyes. It feels when it's cold, it's a little notchy, but I really like the way it feels. I've certainly got no want to improve it. There's nothing.
Okay.
What I have recently done is I've changed the steering wheel for a Momo Mod 7.
I was going to ask you about that. I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah.
What was the motivation behind that?
To basically get the wheel closer to me without moving the seat any closer, basically, because the 996, people may or may not know, the adjustment is only front to back. There's no up and down.
Okay.
And the problem I have, I'm 6'2" and a bit. Okay. And what I find is if I'm dipping the clutch and turning the wheel to change gear, I can trap my hands between the top of my thigh and the steering wheel. And I can put the seat further back because there's still more adjustment, but then my reach isn't close enough.
Okay.
And I do prefer a wheel, probably that comes from doing track days. I do prefer the steering wheel to be a bit closer, especially if I'm driving enthusiastically.
Yeah, it's a nice looking wheel. It's Alcantara as well, isn't it? Was it Alcantara?
Yes, yeah. It's slightly smaller. It's 330 compared to 350. Alcantara, well, suede steering wheel. And it's a 70mm dish.
Does it have the marker? I can't remember from your picture.
It does, yeah. It's got the yellow marker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, those steering wheels don't have airbags, do they?
No, they don't. So I had to do the mod and the get round for the to stop the airbag light coming on. There's a little resistor that you plug in place.
So you had someone install that wheel for you, or you did it yourself? You're a bit handy.
No, I fitted it, and you can see it on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
I couldn't find a good guide to how to fit it and to do everything, so I thought I may as well make one.
Okay, fantastic.
So that's what I've done.
It's a nice looking wheel. I saw it on your Instagram today, actually.
I think it looks lovely.
Yeah, it looks really, really good. Looks really, really good. So what else have you done? What else have you added to the car? Anything else to the interior or exterior?
No, there's the only thing I would like to do, I'd quite like a second set of alloys. Yes. But the only ones I would like is either some Fuchs ones that, to suit the right sizes, obviously, or a set of rough ones, which I can't afford, the roof, sorry. So roof alloys I really like, but the ones that I'd have to buy, the genuine ones, would probably cost me about $6,000 for a set, and I'm never going to spend that.
Yeah, the roof ones are nice. The flat face silver ones.
I love them. Yeah,
they're great. They're great. I really like those as well. Andrew, who was on a very early owner's stories, 911 South, he put them on his 993. I think he got a set secondhand and he put them on. They look fantastic. Yeah. But also the Fuchs as well would be really really good on yours. Yeah,
they're not too bad. I mean, they're still not cheap. I'm still probably looking about just under $2.5 to $3,000, which obviously is not cheap.
I mean, they look good on a standard Carrera 996, like when you see people put them on a standard one. But I actually like the wheels on your C4S. I think the wheels are so iconic of that model. Taking that away takes something away from the style of the C4S. And
the only reason I would do it, if I was going to have a second set of wheels, because I would like to, I was really torn between putting Cup 2s on my car.
Okay.
Or putting the PS2s, which is what I actually put on, which are a good all-rounder. But I would quite like, especially when the weather's, you're in the summer, I would like to have Cup 2s on there because there's such my Integra, I run a Toyo R888s just all the time, which are road legal, but they're basically a track day tyre. They're noisy, but I don't care because I'm only ever driving it fast. You know what I mean?
It's funny you say that about the tyre. I asked Steve about that, actually, because I was thinking, my 997 Carrera, when I go back to Sydney, I don't drive it a lot of miles, a lot of kilometers, and I was thinking, should I get the Cup 2 tires on my 997 Carrera and just see how it changes the driving experience, see how it changes the grip. You know what I mean? Because I've just got the recommended tires, Pilot Sport 2s.
Well, what you need to ask yourself is, would I knowingly take that car out in the rain?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing.
So if I was going to drive for pleasure, if it's a terrible wet day, in winter, then I'm not really taking my car out.
No.
My 911 lives in a garage. It spent most of its life in the garage. When the car was stripped and taken apart, Darren at Unique said it came apart really easily. And he said, there's just no corrosion. The places where you find corrosion, he said, I think it's spent all its life sleeping in a garage through its owners, which is a good thing. So if you're not going to take a car out in the wet, knowingly, then, having what would be a compromised tyre in the wet on there isn't a problem.
Yeah, and Steve's got them on his GT3, of course, on the 997 GT3. And of course, in light rain, they're okay. In heavy rain, they're dangerous. But in light sort of
you've
rain,
got to nurse the car home.
if you get stuck in like a summer downpour and it's just light rain, I'm guessing you'd be okay. But just back to your car for a second, like I think what you've done, and I think what the listeners are going to find interesting is that you don't always have to. I mean, it's not always about finding something that is completely perfect, right? And you didn't know this bore scoring was going to happen, but it just shows you that you can still fix it. Sure, you got to put money into it, but then everything is sorted, and it's that peace of mind that you have in that car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it's your car now. You've got it all sorted. The next person
and that means more to me. That does mean more to me.
Yeah, and the next person that buys it, Simon, when you sell it in 5 years' time, or if you sell it, you have all that record and it's been done. And they know they're getting a good car, and it only helps the value of it in the future as well. It doesn't take away from anything.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but to be honest, I asked myself, and I had this conversation with my friend who's got the 992, is what would I change it for? And presuming that I couldn't afford just to keep it, because to go to 5 cars, I think my wife would start divorce proceedings maybe. So if I had to change it, and I was wanting to change it, I think one of the only things... I kind of went down the GT3 road, but the thing is that it's a completely different owner's prospect, owning a GT3. So if I bought a 996 GT3, I'd need to spend probably £75,000 plus to get a good one.
Yes.
B, I wouldn't take it on the track. I wouldn't want to. My Integra for going on the track is all I'm ever going to need. It's amazing on the track, and I could roll the thing in a ball and literally, write the thing off, and I'm not going to cry because I've got not a lot of money in it. I wouldn't choose that to happen. But if I had a GT3 and I put the thing into a barrier or a tie wall, I would be sick.
Yeah.
So for the driving that I use it for, I really don't think the GT3 is the way to go. So the car that I think I would end up buying will be a 997 GTS manual.
Yeah, good choice. Good choice.
That's probably the only thing I would choose. But again, at the minute, I'd probably have to add, 25 grand to my car to buy that.
And like I said before, that's something that I would buy too, Simon. But a manual GTS is not available in Australia. They only brought them in PDK.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're only available in PDK. Paul, that's on Owner's Stories from New Zealand, he imported one from the UK to New Zealand. He's got a manual one. Even in New Zealand, I don't think they had the manuals. They only had PDKs. Right. But that's a great car. What about the 991 GTS?
Well, this is what I'm saying. So if Kirsty ends up getting a 911, then it'll probably be a 991, but it'll probably be PDK because, again, for traveling for work, she does work a lot from home. We both worked in IT. Like I say, I've moved into property now. But over the years we've been together, we've done a lot of travel. So an automatic, which basically is what the PDK is, would suit her better. Although she'll quite happily drive a manual. She drives my Porsche, she drives my Integra. But yeah, it would probably be a 991.1.
What does she prefer? What does your wife prefer, the Integra or the 996?
The 996, the Integra, she would drive it. I keep on saying I'm going to have to get us to come and do a dual drive track day and pay for some track tuition because I think she'd love it to drive the thing in anger. And the good thing with the Integra, it's very forgiving being front wheel drive car, and the handling is so good that you can find its limit quite gradually in that car. It's the balance is fantastic.
There's a question for you, actually, Simon. You've got the Integra, you're driving the Integra, and then you jump back into the 911. How do you have to adjust yourself the way you drive? Is there a big adjustment?
Well, quick story. I won't go too deep into this. Last year, when we came out of lockdown, and this run that I told you about with the Clio Trophy Owners Club,
yes,
was planned. It was the anniversary of that car being launched. It was 15 years, I think, it would have been. So they were planning a big outing, but because of coronavirus, it kind of all got shelved. Right. But a few of us all said, look, we can travel. Lockdown has been lifted, so we'll socially distance, and there'll be just a small group of us said we're still going to do it. It wasn't the official run, but we followed the same route. So there ended up about 6 of us, I think. And I went in my Integra. It's a perfect car for that. B roads through Wales, the drive, the roads are fantastic. I had just had some work done. I set off on the Friday night to meet up in North Wales. and got there to find that when I filled it with petrol, as I put lock on, I heard what I thought was a CV joint. It turned out it was to do with the power steering. The fluid hadn't been changed. I completely forgot to change the fluid.
Okay.
So I went and got my hotel key, drove all the way home, and swapped out my Integra for my Porsche. And I took my Porsche, and I absolutely loved it. But if I do that run again this year, which I will be doing, I will be taking the Integra because it's built for that kind of driving.
Right.
But I was kind of pleased that it happened because this was before my car even got rebuilt. And I was only probably revving it to about 5,500 revs, but it's got so much torque that it was fantastic. I loved it. And the adjustment between the two, I find really easy, to be honest.
Okay.
I've not really struggled at all. I could jump out of one into the other and drive them both quickly quite easily. That's what I found anyway. But they're completely different animals. Totally different.
Fantastic. So what's planned then? Is there anything else you want to do to the 911? Is there anything you want to add, or you're pretty much done now?
I don't really think... So brakes have all been renewed, but again with standard, because as people will probably know, or if they don't, the C4S is basically the underpinnings of a turbo,
yes,
but without the Metzger engine.
Yes.
So even though the normal Carrera is lighter, I think for the extra braking and cornering overall, I think the C4S is a car that you can drive a bit quicker for your average driver. Maybe some people will disagree with that, but I don't find that you can feel that car really feels four-wheel drive because most of the time it's not. Yeah. And the grip levels are good that you can, the car can move around a bit and I find it quite predictable. You can probably drive it to 7/10 quite safely, and most people that is enough and they will enjoy themselves. So I've got no real plans to mod anything performance-wise because I think the best thing you can spend on a car if you're going to spend money is on brakes and tyres because rather than on performance, because most people performance is the car's got enough performance.
Yep, absolutely.
It's got the sports exhaust, the Porsche sports exhaust. I have looked at a few, but the ones that I'd like are quite expensive.
But the PSC is enough though, isn't it? The sound on the 996 PSC is pretty good.
Oh, it sounds great. I love it. My mother-in-law says it's too loud, but I really like it. Mine's permanently set. I've actually removed the little solenoid chain switcher things, so it's permanently open because I would never drive the car with them closed because I only drive the car for pleasure. So. And it does sound really good. And I know that a lot of people often change their exhaust and realise that actually they don't sound how they want it to sound, or it might be resonate too much, or, and Porsche obviously did all that R&D and they got it right. So I don't really feel I want to change it.
Yeah, it's no need. There's no need. That's fantastic. The interior is okay though? The interior is in good condition?
The interior is immaculate.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why I say I don't regret buying that car, because externally it's fantastic. The interior is literally, it's untouched. The seats are perfect. The carpet's perfect. There's no, there's no knocks or dings or scrapes or anything that, would put you off. So yeah, the interior is great. I'd like to put the GT3 bucket seats in it, but again, I don't have $4 or $5 to buy a pair of those. So the sports seats are good enough for me.
Yeah, they're good seats. The ones you have, I wouldn't bother. Your seats are
so
really
just
cool.
The steering wheel, really. I've now got the driving position that I wanted. I've got. So no, I don't think really there's much. Whether that will change, but I've no intentions for changing. For putting induction kit on it. I'd lose power. Really, I mean, I think virtually all induction kits. A lot of them claim extra power, but from the reading I've done over the years, none of them seem to add it. They might add a bit of noise, but it's
not much power.
Good as it is, yeah.
Well, you're enjoying it how it is, so that's the main thing. You don't really need to do much more. I mean, it's it's a great, from what I've seen on your Instagram, it's a great looking car. It really is, and it looks good in that. It looks good in that silver. It does actually. I knew it wasn't the same silver as mine. I could tell the silver was slightly different because it looks a bit like the rhodium silver, the newer silver, doesn't it? But not as blue. The rhodium silver is more blue.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah. But as we discussed previously, the headlights. I think a lot of people said they didn't like them without really forming their own opinion, and I really do like them. And as we discussed, the early amber light cars are really becoming, they're kind of come back into vogue again now. I mean, they're becoming a real plus point. And there's people are switching.
Your car is what year, Simon? Sorry, your car is a 2003.
So it's a 996.2.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was December. Apparently, it's got the. That's the only other thing. Yes, sorry, that I do want to add is the PCCM Plus, which they do for the 996.
I was going to ask you about that. Because it's something that I really like, and I wish they did it for the 997. So
well, they will do. I think as a few more years tick by, they'll definitely do it for the dot ones. So in effect, I think they just looked at the age and basically said, from this age backwards, we will, come up with a more, because I believe that the PCCM Plus for my car is all the electronics that was in the 991.1, I think it is. Right. Somebody might correct me there. It might be the .2, but so it's not the absolute latest, but it's certainly modern enough so you can connect your phone to it. You get the Google Maps on there. Good hands-free.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's not cheap, is it? But it's worth it. I think it's worth it. It's not cheap.
I thought about buying a SIM for mine because mine does have, I can put the SIM card in.
Yeah.
Because even though I don't really go on my phone, when I'm driving, it is handy just to be able to answer the phone and use the phone if I need to.
Yeah. My 997 has that same kit, Simon. My 997 has that extended phone kit. And when I first bought my car, I used to use that SIM. I bought a SIM. 2G SIM. I don't know if you've heard me tell you the story. Yeah, and it was fantastic. It worked. It was perfect, and then they switched it off.
The thing is that if I did put a SIM in it, then I'd be having to give everyone say, "Oh, this is my Porsche number," which sounds very.
This is my car number. This is my,
my
car
exactly.
number.
People
it's like something out of the 80s.
Unfriend me and just say, "Oh, I don't want to talk to you anymore." What do you mean your car number?
I saw a great Carrera for sale the other day. It was somewhere in the US, and it was immaculate. It was so immaculate, and it had the phone. It was like a 911 Carrera 3.2, and it had the old phone still there. I mean, years ago, people were saying just rip it out. It looks daggy, but now it kind of looks very cool now when you see it. Yeah, it looks very cool. It's part
of the car and the era, and that's what people are buying into. So if it's in there, maybe it doesn't work because it's an old analog system, probably.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
But keep it. But I mean, I've got a friend who's got two Clio Williams, the original Clio Williams.
Yes.
So he's got a Williams 1 and he's got a Williams 3.
Wow, nice.
But he is he's selling both of them because I think he's going to buy a 996 because, it's a bit more grown up. He's a few years younger than me, but he's in his mid-40s. He says, well, it's just the whole scene is more grown up. But it's always been used to front wheel drive, you see. And I said to him, look, he's a good driver. And I said, you'll be fine in it. You'll just need to get used to a rear wheel drive. But I think that's what he's probably going to do is buy. I said, well, buy one before they really do start going up.
Yeah, before they go crazy, which is only a matter of time, only a matter of months, I think. Before the end of the year, I think they're just going to be too high again. They're going to be up there.
Yeah. I think there's about $7 to $9 grand difference between if you had two cars that were the same condition between, say, a Carrera and a C4S, I think you'd probably pay at the minute around about £7,000 to £9,000 more for the C4S.
C4Ss in Australia, a good 996 with about the same sort of mileage as yours, sit somewhere around, I think a good one is about 90,000 Australian dollars now, which is about £50,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
and a little while,
I think they are going to end up there.
Very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the minute for high 20s, and if you're buying from a dealer, I'd say low 30s, you'll get the absolute best C4S manual out there.
Yeah, and I'm talking manual as well. Obviously, the autos are a little bit cheaper, but for the manuals, which are rare in the C4S, because a lot of people did take the auto.
Yeah.
So it is a rare one.
But a guy in the club who's got a 996 GT2 has also just bought for a daily drive when I say high mileage, it's done just over 100,000 miles, C4S. And he bought that car in the low 20s. And it's a fantastic car. So don't be afraid of a high mileage car because if the car is sorted and he's happy to spend a bit of money on it, but he's using it as a daily drive. And like I say, he's got like a 600 brake horsepower, I think, his GT2. But it's quite an animal. And he really is enjoying having the C4S.
Something a little bit less in power, yeah.
And he liked the look of it. And like he said, the performance is more attainable.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
he's bought that as a daily. So, no.
Absolutely. It's got a good two cars there. The GT2 is beautiful.
Oh, it is. It's a special thing. The one he's got, it's a lovely, lovely car. But, you can only get the performance out of that in a few places. You're kind of very limited to where you can really stretch a car like that.
Yeah, true. All right, Simon, we're almost up to an hour. Well, actually, we're past an hour. I think we've gone a little bit further. I just like to always ask this question before we finish the podcast about your favorite roads that you would recommend to someone coming to the UK, roads you've driven on or roads you'd like to drive on that would, really show the character of a 911 or any type of sports car, really.
Probably three places. So we've got a place in the Lake District, which we've just been back up to this weekend for the first time. There are some great roads around the Lake District, but no good when it's busy. So It's kind of out of season. There's some fantastic roads. So yes, selected places around the Lake District. Scotland, I'd say if we don't do it this year, certainly do it next year, going to do the NC 500, which is, you will have heard about, and I know other people have mentioned it. But overall, by far the best road driving I've ever done is on that run with the Clio Trophy Club. And that starts in North Wales, runs through mid Wales, we stop off overnight in Aberystwyth, and then down to South Wales. Evo Car Magazine made the Evo Triangle famous to the point that it's now got average speed cameras around it.
Has it? Yeah, I was going to say they used it all the time, didn't they, in Wales?
And it got kind of ruined because of that, people going. But there's still a huge amount of mountain roads which are unbelievably good.
That's fantastic.
By far the best driving I've ever done has been in around North and Mid.
Are you planning to take your 996 to Europe? Are you planning to take a drive to Europe when things settle down?
I wouldn't mind doing. And a lot of people have said to me, why have I never done the Nürburgring? And for one reason and one reason only, the cost of doing it, I can do several track days in the UK. So rather than spend the money to do a trip over there, and the other thing is I would be scared of having an accident at the Nürburgring because the cost of recovery is ridiculous.
Can you imagine doing that for the first time in your 911? I would be just terrified. I'm sorry, I'd be terrified.
I wouldn't do it. I'd do it in the Integra, but I wouldn't do it in the 911.
I know, you'd have to do it in some other car. I couldn't do it in my 911. No way.
No, because I couldn't live with something going wrong.
Yeah. And you see all those accidents on the YouTube videos. It's quite scary how quickly they happen as well. All right, Simon, that's great. Thanks for today. I just want to let everyone know your Instagram again. It's at pig_monkeys_Porsche. It'll be in the description of this podcast. And also your YouTube, which is just Pig Monkeys, is it?
Pig Monkey, yeah. And if you just search for Pig Monkey and 996 C4S, you'll find my videos.
Okay, so check out Simon's Instagram and check out his YouTube. Make sure you follow him. Make sure you subscribe. And make sure that, you say hello if you've been on Owner Stories before, which I'm sure all the other guys will. That was great, Simon. Thanks for chatting today.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Thank you so much.
Well, we'll keep in touch via Instagram.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's keep in touch. I like to know more about, how your car fares over time as well and how much you're enjoying it. And I didn't ask you actually, and we're finishing now, but I should have asked you. Is there an itch to get another 911?
Well, yeah, there is, but like I say, it will be for my wife. If I do, it will, a second 911 definitely, but
the one for your wife,
it's got to replace one of the other cars.
Yeah.
I've nowhere to keep a fifth car.
Yeah. I think a GTS for your wife would be pretty cool, though.
Yeah, a 991, and it'd be a convertible as well, actually, because she likes convertibles. So I'd probably, a 991 GTS convertible would be nice.
And the 991's shape in the convertible is a great shape. That's really when the shape came, those curves at the back where the top is so
she doesn't
tall.
like the shape of the 997 or the 996 convertible. But I've shown her pictures of the 991, and she's like, "Oh no, that's nice."
Yeah, the 991 is definitely very, very nice.
So yeah, that'll probably be in the next couple of years. Will probably be the way that we'll go.
Fantastic. Thank you, Simon.
Okay, nice speaking to you.
Nice speaking to you too. All right, everyone. That's Simon coming in from the UK, from northwest England, talking about his 996 Carrera 4S. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.